Congresswoman Mace, I want to start. I invited you on the show to talk about that bill first. I want to talk about some of the other things. Let me start with that bill. It's because I sort of read it two ways. Is this a bill about right to try clinical stuff, sort of the, when all the normal routes have not worked, or is this about comfort care at the end of life? How would you describe it, Congresswoman?
I would describe it as all of the above. There is this precondition that this is an option at the end of life after you've tried other traditional methods. And we're talking about individuals who are terminally ill when nothing else has worked, and using something like a Schedule I drug like MDMA to be able to have a better quality of life at the end, helping with anxiety and depression, and even in most cases pain. And we've seen so many people across the country in study after study, including one gentleman in my own district who suffers from PTSD, being in one of these MDMA trials. And after a few trials, he's now totally healed from his PTSD. It's had some enormous successes in some of these clinical trials.
Look, some people want to participate in clinical trials, but there's actually some cost issues, or maybe their insurance company won't do it, or maybe the rules of the clinical trial make them travel and they can't afford to do that. Is there anything in this bill to help out people who maybe don't have the means to, because some of these trials, you have to be in the location, right? And maybe so is there anything in the bill that would deal with that?
From a funding standpoint and getting funding for patients to travel, no, there would not be. But this is bipartisan. You have Senator Rand Paul, Senator Cory Booker, Congressman Blumenauer, and myself in the House, all of us working together to push this forward in a bipartisan way. Having the ability for patients to utilize MDMA for end-of-life care, just the opportunity to, that's been done in very limited stages to this at this juncture in time. To be able to do that more broadly across the country is going to be a very valuable next step. And as you stated earlier on the program, how divisive the partisanship is today, this is one place where we're going to be able to work together. And I look forward to working with everyone on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers and pushing this forward.
No, this is one of those that feels like there's less of the downside arguments. But let's talk about those issues that divide us. You could make an argument that reproductive rights care is also about medical freedom. Do you accept that comparison?
Well, at some point we have to decide, when does that fetus become a child in a woman's womb with rights? So we see in socialist countries like Europe, if they even allow abortion, that they cut it off when the gestation age is 12 or 15 weeks, with the UK being the only outlier there. And there's got to be some moderation here. The vast majority of Americans, 75%, are okay with some guardrails when it comes to abortion. And you have far-right fringes and far-right left fringes on both sides of the aisle, and that's not where the majority of Americans are. They're okay with, something after 15 weeks eliminating abortion altogether, or at the very least putting in exceptions, but having some compassion for folks. And I made a statement last week when we were having this vote on contraceptives, because my own state, and I'm staunchly pro-life, and my own state is trying to now ban exceptions for women who've been raped or young girls who are victims of incest. And in some cases, not in every case for the life of the mother, very, very, very narrow exceptions. That's not acceptable. And that's not acceptable to the vast majority of Americans.
You brought up public opinion here. Do you think public opinion in South Carolina is all that different on abortion than it is? I mean, I'm sure I know the numbers a little bit. It's slightly more small c conservative on some of these issues, but not dramatically so based on what the legislature's doing. Why do you think they're going against? Yeah.
It's hard
Why are they going
to say.
against sort of middle of the road public opinion?
Well, you see that, in both sides of the aisle, people are afraid of the base. You just saw me get through a really gnarly primary a few weeks ago. Most folks up here don't want to have to go through that. And so they cater to a base that is not the majority, but the vast majority of Americans, and including in South Carolina, where it's 70% support medical marijuana, for example. Our lawmakers aren't not there at all. The vast majority of South Carolinians, while we might be pro-life and be more conservative than other states, but the vast majority of those in the state want exceptions for life of the mother for rape and incest. We have rural counties in South Carolina where there's not a single OBGYN doctor. I mean, how is a woman supposed to get birth control or birth control devices when there's no OBGYN anywhere near where she lives? And so if we're going to ban abortion, we certainly have to make sure women have access to contraceptives, that they can get it over the counter, that they can get whatever that they need to ensure that their propensity for needing to have or wanting to have an abortion is greatly reduced. So that's the very minimum we should be doing right now in this country, particularly in this debate. When there are two sides, you've got the far left, they want it for any reason up until birth. The far right wants no exception. So we've got to come somewhere in the middle.
Do you, what did you learn from your successful primary? I say this, you seem to be acting as if you feel liberated, but I'm curious if that's your feeling. What did you take away from the primary if it's not that?
It was one of the hardest things I've ever been through, minus being a knob at the Citadel back in 1996. It was hard on my family. My kids were attacked in the press. But it is liberating. It is freeing to know that I can be real, I can be my authentic self, and I can win, because that authenticity in America today is why so many people don't trust Congress, because the lack of truth, the lack of honesty, the lack of authenticity in all of politics at the federal, state, and local level. I just showed you can be exactly who you are. You can work hard, have a dream, and be successful. I mean, I dropped out of school when I was 17. I was a Waffle House waitress before I went anywhere else. And here I'm in the halls of Congress today and trying to just work hard for the people. And that's what they want today. They don't want performative art. They don't want members of Congress to be social media influencers. They want us to work and work hard for them.
You know, you were targeted because you thought that there should be a bipartisan investigation on January 6th. I know the committee that's there is not what the version you were supporting at the time. But what do you make of what you've learned from the January 6th committee, and do you find it to be a legitimate investigation?
I actually voted against the January 6th Commission because there were 4 federal agencies already investigating it, including the Department of Justice, the Secret Service, the FBI, and Homeland Security. Plus, we had 10 committees at the time, both in the Senate and the House. I wanted those investigations to conclude. I will tell you, the conversations that I have with folks in South Carolina is that they're really sick and tired of the partisanship. And while many folks believe that the January 6th Commission is partisan, there was room, I think, where either statements under oath could be corroborated or cross-examined, and some of that is missing, and that's what people want to hear. They want to hear all 3 sides, the left, the right, and somewhere in the middle is the truth, right? And so you're seeing also what's coming into play now is inflation and gas prices. I talked to a lot of people about how much it costs to fill their car. Kids are getting ready to go back to school, and parents have to make decisions. I talked to a mom yesterday who tries to spend, $200 on clothing for her kids, but now that money's got to go to gas. And so people are making really tough decisions right now, and that's where our focus should be in the state of South Carolina and across the country.
Okay, I see where you pivoted that question. I'm impressed to watch you as a practitioner there. But what's come out of the January 6th committee? Do you think it's made Donald Trump less qualified to ever hold federal office?
I think when you see the candidates come forward for 2024 on both sides of the aisle, I think you're going to see a really deep bench, not just for Republicans, but for Democrats, too. People are really fed up with what they're seeing in this country, and somebody's got to come forward as a leader to get us out of this mess.
All right, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, a Republican from South Carolina, mostly Charleston, South Carolina. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective with us.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.